Okay. Welcome, everyone. September 14th, 2023, for another Apex office hours. And today we're going to be talking about Apex and property graphs in Oracle Database 23C. I'm your host today, Jason Haynes. I'm a senior principal product manager for Oracle Apex, and I'm very excited to be here today. We have the Q&A function and feature of Zoom. So if you have any questions, please hit that Q&A and we'll get to your questions as we can. We're probably going to hold off on the majority of questions until after today's presentation. First, a few things. The Apex team is going to be at Oracle Cloud World in Las Vegas next week. We're really excited. Things actually kick off in full steam on Tuesday morning. So pay attention to social media for various kind of posts and pictures and all these little comments that we have during the sessions that we participate in. Monica and I specifically will be on the demo floor, the exhibit floor grounds, where we're going to be demoing Apex for all the participants that come by and talk about Apex. We also have several sessions, as you can see there. Tuesday, we've got a few sessions in the afternoon. Wednesday's a really busy day where I'm actually going to be conducting a couple hands-on labs with some other Apex team members. But we also have a few other sessions, and Monica's coming all the way from Colombia to Las Vegas to do her session. What is it? Oracle Forms to Oracle Apex project. So we're very excited to have her do that. And then, of course, we round out Thursday with new features and roadmaps. So it's going to be a really exciting week for everyone that's going to be attending at Cloud World. If you're going to Cloud World, let us know in the chat. We'd be very interested in knowing who all is going to be there to come see us, because we're going to be around all week. So from there, here's a shortcut to know: apex.oracle.com/shortcuts. There on that particular page, you'll see all the shortcuts we refer to on our slides. So with that said, there are blog posts. There are several blog posts actually, but from that shortcut link, the /blog, you're going to see the blog having to do with empowering search with OCI Vision in Oracle Apex, embracing the future, unleashing AI's power with Oracle Apex, and an FAQ about Oracle Forms to Apex modernization. So we try to put out blogs fairly, often on the Apex team, and some of these are just very pertinent and most recent. So you can always go to apex.oracle.com/blog to see links there. In addition, we have several Apex events coming up, not just Cloud World next week in the US. We have stuff going around the world. On September 14th, which is today, we have Apex in Spanish office hours, performance tuning. On the 27th, which is next week, or actually the week after next week, Business Innovation Series with Siemens. That's going to be very exciting. Salim's going to be involved with that, and Ashish. Again, you can see the shortcut links that are shown under each one of these. And then on October 3rd, we have Apex in Romanian. I'm not going to try to pronounce that, but something about configuring email, I think it is in Romanian. So, I'm always struggling with these different translations to English. But in any case, you can see all the shortcut links there. And again, don't forget about that main link there, apex.oracle.com/shortcuts, for all of them, all the important ones. Okay, so today we have a very special guest, Rahul Tasker. He's going to present on Apex and property graphs in Oracle Database 23C. And we'll kick it off here with Rahul.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rahul from the Spatial and Graph Product Management team. And today I'm excited to talk to you guys about Oracle Graph, which is part of the Oracle database. And specifically, I'm going to talk about how we can use graph features of Oracle Database 23C with Apex. This is a quick safe harbor statement, just stating that everything in this presentation is intended for information purposes only. And then in this session, I want to introduce graphs to those of you who aren't familiar with it. I'll talk a little bit about SQL property graphs, which is the specific type of property graph that's being used as a part of 23C and can be used really easily with Apex. Finally, we'll talk about some of the options for using SQL property graphs in Apex, including native support and the graph visualization plugin. And at the end, we'll finish off with a demo and some Q&A. So to start off, what are graphs? A graph is a data model that represents entities as vertices and relationships as edges. A very simple example would be this call. Right? We can represent every person on this call as a node and every relationship between us as an edge. So for example, you're watching me give this presentation, and so that's an edge connecting you to me. Right? But graphs can be used for a multitude of relationships, such as network connectivity, dependency graphs, physical networks, supplier networks, workflows, knowledge graphs, etc. So basically, a graph is a representation of any data where data entities become vertices and the connections between them become edges. And so this data model can be very useful for graph analytics and for easily traversing connected data sets in applications. One example of graph analytics would be like the graph that you see on the screen. If we consider this example where we have nodes represented by J, K, and L, we can see that J has only one connection, but that incoming edge from, but that's an incoming edge from I, which is an important node. So with that, we might recognize that J is also important because it's connected to another node that's already very highly connected. And we can start to identify these highly connected nodes using algorithms like PageRank. So that was just like a very brief introduction to graph analytics. So we can use different algorithms like PageRank algorithm, shortest path algorithm, et cetera, to run some of these graph analytics. But to see an example of why we would traverse these connected data sets, let's look at a quick example. So let's imagine that we're building a social media platform where we want to enhance the user's experience by ensuring that users can interact with their friends and family as easily as possible. This will help us keep our users happy and attract new users to the platform. So in this like fictitious example, what might our data model look like? A traditional SQL model might look something like this, right? It's got tables that represent users, creating posts, following each other, commenting on posts, and liking posts. And so if we start to model this as a graph, the data connections become a little bit more intuitive to follow. And so while some SQL experts might be able to look at the original SQL data model on the left-hand side and know that the data is highly connected very easily, the graph representation is a lot more intuitive to a lot of people, especially when we have to traverse across multiple tables or multiple layers deep. So in SQL, traversing relationships across multiple tables can require lengthy and complex joins. But if we create a graph model on those tables, we can simplify the traversal to a simple SQL property graph query. So from these examples, if we wanted to find users that we could recommend to another user, and say we could recommend users that are less than 5 follows away from the original user. So like, for example, if I follow someone and they follow someone else, maybe I should be recommended to follow that person. And then think that like 5 layers deep, right? How would we be able to write that in SQL? And so if we assume that we want to recommend users follow friends of friends up to 5 layers deep, the SQL query requires these lengthy joins and unions. However, using SQL property graphs, we can simplify this to just a couple of lines. Okay. So using property graphs affords us a much simpler query. So taking it down from 10 plus, 20 plus lines of code, we're able to simplify it down to these 4 lines here using those curly braces and the pattern matching syntax that you see on the screen. And so we can start to ask interesting questions like, are these 2 users connected through some chain of followers? Who doesn't follow someone back? And who are the users who liked a given post? We can go even deeper and start to ask questions like, who of them follow the person who posted the thing that they like? Right? And so these are just a few types of questions that can be answered in a few lines with graphs. So how do we model our data as a graph in Oracle? So with Oracle Graph, we model graphs from the database tables using a create property graph statement. So following the example that we saw earlier, we can create a graph for our social media app. The users table has all of the information that we need about the users, and the followers table, for example, shows the connections between users. So users can become a vertex table, whereas the followers can become an edge table, and any row in the followers becomes an edge connecting the rows in the users. And when we look at the create property graph statement, notice in the create property graph statement that we specify the vertex tables and the edge tables and the keys in the edge tables that reference that vertex table. And so this statement is just an example of one vertex and edge table, but we can add any number of vertex tables and any number of edge tables to create a much larger graph. Right? So from our previous example, posts would be an additional vertex table, comments and likes would be additional edge tables, and the keys would reference the users and posts tables. Okay. So that's how we create and model the graph. Once the graph is created, we can start to query it directly through SQL. And the SQL syntax for the property graph requires a graph table clause, a match clause, and a column clause as shown in this example here. The match clause runs a pattern matching query on the graph specified, and the columns clause returns the columns to the select statement outside the graph table clause. Right? So inside the match clause, you'll notice the syntax for the patterns that we're matching. In this example, we're matching a source to a destination node where the nodes are connected by a follows edge or by that follows table. And so since the follows table only connects the users tables back to itself, even though it's not specified, we will only get users back. And so then the ID for the source node is returned back to the select statement. And so what we'll get back is just a list of IDs that match that pattern. And within that same match clause, there are some syntax variations to run different kinds of pattern matching queries. So for example, if we want to query for all nodes that are connected by another node in 1 to 3 edges, that would look something like this, right? Where we can start to use those curly braces that we saw in the previous example and in the example on the bottom of the screen. So if I'm the source vertex, and this query would return everyone that I follow, who they follow, and who they follow, right? But if I were to remove the 1 and the comma, then it would only show the users who were 3 follows away and not the users that I already directly followed. Does that make sense? And so what's really neat about SQL property graphs is that they are a part of the Oracle database. And this makes supporting multi-workload applications as simple as possible. So instead of keeping disparate databases synchronized, we can access what we need through one place, right? So this means we don't need to do any kind of ETL replication in order to access our data through other tools that use SQL. This includes like all of the SQL tools that we know and love, like SQL CL, SQL Developer, any SQL drivers, including Python, Java, C, etc., and of course, Apex. And so now I want to talk a little bit more about the options that we have for working with graphs in Apex, starting in Apex version 23.1. So first, yesterday, the team released the graph visualization plugin and sample application. This is available for download at the Oracle GitHub IO/Apex. The sample app demonstrates the use of the plugin in depth with several examples. Today, as a part of the demonstration that I'll show later, I'll show you a different application using the data set that we saw earlier, that social media example. But I encourage you to check out the sample app for some more examples. So like I said, as of this week, the graph visualization plugin preview and sample app are available for download. So this plugin allows us to visualize graph queries through an interactive page item. Looks kind of like what you see in the image on the slide here. You can customize the labels, the appearance, the layout, of the graph using the attributes tab, which I'll show in the demonstration. And the plugin allows you to run SQL queries in the page designer and display them to the application. So this makes it interactive for the end user so that they can drag nodes across the page, remove nodes on the fly without affecting the underlying graph, and reset their graph back to the original. And we'll talk a little bit more about this when during the demonstration. As of Apex version 23.1, this also includes built-in support for property graphs. So there is a property graph source type, which can be used to run queries. This source separates the graph name, the match clause, the columns clause, and the where clause for you. So it's a little bit simpler to organize your graph queries and write them effectively. You can also use the SQL query source to write your queries in the exact syntax that we saw earlier, but it's really up to your preference of how you run them. Okay. And so, like I said, I prepared a brief demo using the social media data model that we saw earlier. So I will switch over my screen and we can take a look at some examples. So let's say we have an admin application for our social media example. So here we can query specifically for by any ID to see the information about any user that we might want. So here we have our user Tom, right? We can display out into tables and run all of these queries using SQL property graphs. And so we can get the general user information. This is showing all of the information that we have stored in the user's vertex. So if I were to change this to, let's say, ID 9, refresh the page, this will be updated with the user whose ID is 9, whose name is Toodles. And we can also start to visualize using the plugin. So here we can see everyone who's following Toodles directly and everyone who Toodles is following directly. We can right-click on these nodes and on the edges to see more information about them, very similar to how we support visualizations in other tools. And like I said, we can even drop a given vertex and then reset the graph back to what it was originally. We can start to ask those interesting questions like I saw earlier, or like I said earlier as well. Like what are the number of likes on a user's post? What are the number of comments on a user's post? These also support the aggregates that we see in SQL, like group by clauses, order by clauses, sum, count, all that kind of stuff directly out of the box. We can see information like the post that a user has liked and who posted it. We can see the post that a user's commented on and what they commented. We can start to visualize these as well, including like, who posted what and who liked it. So for example, Strike created a post and Toodles liked their post. We can also see similarly the users that are the post that a user has commented on and who posted the post that they commented on. And we can visualize that like we are here. And we can also start to see, more things like who follows a user, who a user is following, who's not following the user back, and who we can recommend using that query that we saw earlier. So now I'm going to jump into the page designer. And I want to walk you guys through how some of these things work directly through the console. So looking back at that user information example that we saw, right, we can see that the graph name, the match clause, the columns clause, and the where clause have all been separated. We can use the bind variable for the ID input, just like we could using any SQL query source or any graph table or any SQL table source. We can, using the graph visualization plugin, we can run SQL queries. And we can continue to use bind variables using like some simple string interpolation like this. And then another thing that's worth noting is the attributes tab. In the attributes tab, we can select a given layout, the vertex label, edge labels. We can also add in the labels directly in styles if we have something that's more specific, like if we want to say like the properties or reference the specific properties of the vertex. For example, I'm using the first name. You could also do multiple properties. So you could do the first name and then a space and then the same thing for the last name. And this allows us to get a little bit more flexible with the size, the label, the colors, the kind of icons we're using, etc. So like I said, we can even run SQL graph queries using the SQL query source. So doing that, we can use a very similar syntax to what we saw in the slides. And we can use aggregates like count and order by functions in order to get the most out of our data. And all of this is very similar. Well, is happening directly through SQL. So all of those SQL syntaxes are supported using property graphs. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I do want to look at a couple of these really interesting ones. So one is not following the user back, right? We can run a very simple query that might otherwise require at least a few joins on itself. And instead it becomes much, much simpler. And still, even using that can recommend, even when we get more specific than just what we saw in the slides. Like this is pretty much what we saw in the slides. Even when we start to look at restricting certain edge cases, like making sure that the user isn't recommended back to themselves, and that we're not recommending someone that the user already follows, still becomes a pretty simple query to run. So pretty much what we saw was a brief snippet of how we can use graphs in Apex. And the way that we could use graphs is by enabling us to traverse otherwise complex relationships. And what's neat specifically about Oracle property graphs is that they're seamlessly integrated into the Oracle database ecosystem to allow for like the greatest developer experience possible and to easily make the most out of your data without using any ETL processes, any complicated joins, anything like that. So, and just quickly to kind of sum it all up, we talked a little bit about what graphs are, specifically what SQL graphs are as a part of Oracle Database 23C. We talked about the new functionality that's coming with Apex, both native support for Apex and the graph visualization plugin that was released earlier this week. And so really the main takeaway is that graphs can make complex queries very simple. And the new SQL syntax comes directly out of the box, supported both natively through Apex and using any other SQL tools out of the box, as well as using the graph visualization plugin for Apex. And with that, there are some additional resources available um, for graphs in Oracle Database 23C, including some blog posts, some examples using Jupyter, SQL Developer. There are some videos on property graphs, live labs workshops if you're interested in getting some more hands-on experience, as well as documentation for the plugins, the sample download app, and the Oracle Graph Developer Guide. You can learn more about graphs at Database World at Cloud World. We have some learning sessions, hands-on labs, digital sessions, and demos. You can find some more details on these Cloud World sessions and details on the spatial Cloud World sessions in these links. And if there are any remaining questions, I can take them now.
Thanks for all that, Rahul. That's so cool. I mean, I was just mentioning in the chat how I used to have to do all these connect by hierarchical queries in the past. And man, it used to always just hurt my head and give me a headache to get. All I wanted was like org chart type stuff. And Graph is just going to make such easy work of all of that. It's just really exciting. I can't wait till we actually have access to do all of this on our own instances. We have a bunch of questions that have been answered already. That looks great. Thank you, team, for paying attention to the Q&A. We don't have any that are currently open. I think everyone's answered all of them. Now's the time to put in any other questions everyone might have, so we can get Rahul to maybe demonstrate anything further or answer any other questions. There's a lot of good content also in the chat itself from Jayant Sharma and Denise Merrick. A lot of good links there. So take a few moments before we conclude the session to make sure you hit those links. Now, I just double checked because I wasn't 100% sure myself, but the sample graph visualizations app is available in the Apex 23.1 gallery today, right now. But just to clarify on that, Rahul, do we not need Database 23C free to be able to run that, or will it run currently as is?
You'll need Oracle Database 23C free in order to use.
All right. Thank you for that clarification, because when you bring it up there, it just shows that it's available. I didn't try to download and install, but just to make it clear for everyone, these features are going to be available in Apex. The sample app will then run in Apex when you're running Apex on Database 23C free, or when it becomes generally available. So at this time, you're not.
Jason, sorry,
is that right?
Can I add to that?
Sure.
Yes, that is correct. You need the 23C free developer edition. It will also work if you're using Apex with ADB serverless. So today it supports ADB serverless and 23C.
But on the ADB service, are we not talking about Oracle Database 19C currently?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So somehow there's been some magic done on the back end to make it work on Oracle Cloud today.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I haven't had a chance to play with it myself, so thank you for the clarification. Another question Nate's asking, roughly when will 23C Database Enterprise Edition be released? I think with the word roughly is being used, we can say probably by the end of the year, maybe. I don't know. Sometime soon. Any other questions, anyone? Well, hey, everyone, all the participants and the panelists that have been answering these questions, thank you so much. Rahul, thank you again for taking the time to join us today and give your presentation and explain how all this comes together. I see a lot of tremendous use cases coming forward to be able to bring this together, especially in Apex. But by and large, this is just a tremendous opportunity to use all these features of Oracle Database, in addition to all the spatial features, right? I mean, just think about just a few years ago, maps was not something easily done in Apex, and then Apex offered support. I think it was in 21.1 when it came out. We had Apex Maps, right? And now we're going to have graph support with 23C and also available today on ADB. That's just tremendous. All this progress with Apex is being made. I see that we have a few other questions coming in. Are those good? 23, okay. So someone is asking, we use Oracle EBS 1212 on Oracle 19C database. Can we use this graph feature? And I guess that would only be if they're on ADB with Oracle EBS 12.2. Is that right?
Yep. It would then have to be on ADBs. Yep.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Melly already answered that. Got it. Right. And there's all kinds of opportunities for you to reach to everyone here on the call offline, including myself and Monica. Again, if you're going to have the opportunity to come join us in Vegas, please come make yourself known at the demo grounds or in any of our many sessions. Just to make it clear, we have 43 Apex sessions at Oracle Cloud World this year. I mean, that's tremendous. And 7 of them are from the Apex team ourselves. But just knowing that so many lines of businesses within Oracle are coming out to demonstrate different techniques and technologies within Apex is going to just be tremendous. We're very excited. So look to social media on Twitter, X, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and even on YouTube. We're going to be posting as much stuff and as much content as we can next week. I think everyone's pretty much got a chance to click all the links in the chat. If you haven't, please reach out to us, and we'll be back to you soon for the next Oracle Apex office hours coming up probably next month. In other words, thank you everyone for your time, and have a great day. That concludes today's office hours.